So, Dr. Dave, we're back.
Good to be back. Thanks for doing this impromptu recording with me. I know I kind of caught you off guard.
Yeah, no, it's my
You were,
it's my pleasure. It sounds like for those just joining us, I was catching up with Dave the end of the workday, kind of just bitching about what's going on in my life with my kids and some local neighbor drama and politics and consequences. And we're realizing like this is really kind of an impromptu book revisiting of a book that we have reviewed in the past together personally, and that hopefully there's some value here for others. But years ago we read the Coddling of the American Mind, a book by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt, and he really advocated that we are too soft on children, that we keep them locked up indoors, that we keep them on screens too much, that we supervise them too much, and trust them too little. Um, and I'm sharing on the screen here the cover, the book art cover. The Coddling of the American Mind: How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. Um, More specifically, the when you Google "Coddling of the American Mind" and free range, because this concept of free range parenting came into my awareness, I think, through this book, although it's certainly something that's talked about pretty widely in parenting circles and parenting podcasts. But the book argues that overprotective parenting and overprotective education and essentially the opposite of free range parenting have created a generation that feels fragile, that this safetyism, this culture of safetyism prevents children from developing resilience because it shields them from small risks, ultimately causing higher anxiety and a decline in free speech, particularly on college campuses. So kind of a
you
lot to
know,
unpack there, but
it's
I mean,
it
it's
is a lot. It is a lot to impact, and sorry, I just get so excited when we talk about books and revisit them. I just have to interject my 2 cents and kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
segue
please.
into it, how
Yeah.
it relates to your story. But yeah, this is a phenomenon that everyone, knows, this sort of helicopter parenting, this idea that parents are kind of curating every step of a child's existence, from the time they come home, they're in structured activities and working, building that resume, but to the exclusion of what those of us, particularly, I always brag about being from Gen X, even though I'm like a month away from being a millennial. But I feel like those of us like had that Gen X experience because we were called latchkey kids, and I was one of those where you just your parents aren't home. There's a key under the doormat, and you just sort of figure out what to do, and that leads to a lot of that free play, which leads to a lot of learning how to communicate and build relationships, and that is something that he argues is being stripped away. And this is a no duh kind of observation. Any parent you talk to will tell you, whether they're from Gen X, millennials, whatever, they'll tell you that my kids interact way less with their peers in person than we do. And and we see the kind of effects of it when we see like 20-year-olds who don't know how to hold a conversation properly, or who have to show up to the doctor's office with their moms because they don't know how to speak to a medical professional. And she's arguing that we need to go back to that sort of Gen X model of sort of free range kids who navigate their world independent of adults and learn those crucial relationship and just common sense survival skills. And there was a whole chapter where they talk about this concept of free range parenting, because there was a parent who noticed that like people would actually like sort of like call the authorities if they saw a 9-year-old just walk in the neighborhood by themselves. So she created this concept of free range parenting to the extent where she would even like pin something on her kid saying, "Hey, I'm a free range kid. You don't
Yeah,
need to
give them a
call
little
the
card,
cops."
like a
You
like an
know,
ID card. Yeah.
And you basically were implementing that yesterday. So tell me how that went.
Yeah, so we've been implementing it for, for a little while. We live in a neighborhood that makes it easy. I talk to friends all the time who are extremely unsettled at the idea of letting their kids wander around freely. My kids are 5. Um, and there's a lot of hesitance at this age to not be hovering over your kids. In fact, we go to play dates with other kids and we think we're meeting at a school playground or meeting at a park. And invariably, often, there's at least one parent in the group who wants to go and hover over the kids and follow them around the park, follow them around and always be within 10, 15 feet staring at them. And I can make a lot of jokes and say like, there's other observations like this is usually more the case with parents of one child versus parents who have 4 kids and they let their kids run around a little more. They realize like I can't possibly watch them all. It's good for them to play. But hovering parents is helicopter parents that hover is everywhere. But I live in a neighborhood where there's a couple trails between my street and a couple other streets. I have a big backyard. Our neighbors tend to have big backyards. Some of them are open, some of them are gated. Um, there's places for the kid. There's a couple cul-de-sacs with like large planters that they can play in with trees and things they can climb, little green spaces, right? And
You live
so
in this sort of aspirational neighborhood. I've been to your neighborhood, so I'll, tell the visitors, yes, like you're very close to your neighbors, but there is a ton of just open green space, like right near you, like hiking trails like that you go on for miles. It's very low traffic area. You guys living on an island to keep out the riffraff somehow. So no one's storming the police and like setting up a makeshift city in your part of Washington.
right. This is not the Chaz zone. Yeah. So I live in this idyllic little corner of Washington. It's great. And we let the kids run around a little bit. I've constantly preached to my children, do not go in other people's yards. Some of the neighbors, however, constantly preach back to my children, oh, I don't mind. You can play in my yard anytime. And so it's created a little bit of this ambiguity around like, are they allowed to play in the neighbor's yard? Or are they not? Would they get some conflicting instructions? But I reiterate this with them all the time. I'm like, you stay in our yard. If Mr. Tom said you could play in his backyard, that's fine. But I want you to knock on his door and let him know you're doing it. Do not go in anyone else's yard. And then there's other areas that are not people's yard where they could be playing. So when my son was playing with 2 neighborhood boys, I thought everything was chill. It didn't occur to me to helicopter over him.
Were these neighborhood boys his age or older?
Yeah, one of them's in his class. One of them's 6 years old. He's like 6 months older, and he's in his class. And the other one is that kid's older brother, who's almost 8. And usually they just play soccer in our backyard or kick soccer balls around the neighborhood. Um, I knew they were going a little further, but I didn't think they were getting in trouble. I didn't think they were trespassing in people's yards until I called them back and a neighbor came tromping behind them. I'm calling my son in for dinner, and that meant the other kids were going to go back to their house. And then this other neighbor was kind of stomping behind them and asked me, who are their parents? Where do those kids live? And I'm like, uh-oh, what, what,
did
what
she
happened
did she
here?
have like that I want to speak to the manager haircut just to make
She
it?
did not have the haircut. No, no,
Man,
but she definitely had she definitely had the intention to talk to the manager. So I said, oh, they're over there. What happened? Were they in your yard? And And she said, yes, they were in my yard, but I'm not even worried about that. I don't care about that. One of them threw a rock and it hit my deck. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, what the hell? Like, these kids should not be throwing rocks. I've talked to them about this before. Like, this is outrageous. She seemed quite scared that it had almost broken her window, that it was a big rock, that it made a loud thud when it hit her deck, that somebody could have been killed. You know, I I felt like it's okay. Like I thought this is fine. Like she should go tell the other mom, and this kid should get a talking to, and this should just never happen again. Um, and it's good to have an angry. I actually try to encourage other parents to correct my children often because they learn more from other parents. They care more about they're more scared of other parents. So I thought this was I thought this was going in a direction of just being a good teaching moment. She would stomp over to this house, be a little bit of the scary neighbor, and say, "Don't you ever do that again. I'll call the cops next time
And
you
is
do
that
that,"
how it
kind of thing.
ended? Was that
No.
the conclusion? Oh,
No, I think my neighbor, the mom of the boys, I think she was so startled and so conflict averse that she kind of just gave like a deer in the headlights like reaction. And I think it left the aggrieved neighbor who was upset. I think it left her feeling like maybe she wasn't being heard, or she wasn't being like there like this other, like the mom of the two boys wasn't taking it seriously. So apparently she just got more and more animated, and this whole thing kind of like really upset the boys mom, and the boys are crying, and we think this is it, right? So ultimately they disband, and again, I'm still thinking like this is a good teaching moment. This is great, right? Like you throw rocks, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to have to write an apology letter. You're going to have a neighbor that doesn't like you for a while. Um, that's fine. Like this is a good social lesson. Um, Kids shouldn't throw rocks in a direction where there could be people or property. Um, so all is well. The neighbor who has the boys, she was taking it pretty hard, feeling really uncomfortable with the conflict with the other neighbor, and we were counseling her to like just get an apology letter, everything will be fine. The next day, that neighbor who had the rock thrown at her house, she sent a formally worded text, like to all of us, like, this is with full names, like, this is so and so at this house. And we were the ones who had the rock thrown at our house intentionally. And this is a very serious matter. And this is not,
whoa.
this is not
Let me let
harmless.
me let me reiterate for the audience. These are 6 and 7 year old. Are your kids
Yeah.
six yet? Are they? They're
5.
six.
These are
They're
little
five.
boys,
They're
5, 6,
five.
and 7. Yeah.
So your kids are
These are
still
3 little
five, right? They
boys.
turned 6 in September.
Correct.
So they're
Correct.
so we're talking about a 5 year old and a 6 year old and a 7 year old.
Yep. Yep.
It is not as though they are known to premeditate acts of violence or vandalism. Meaning, this seems like to me very normal boundary testing for that age group.
Yeah.
Like if they
Yeah.
were 12,
Yeah.
yeah, I would obviously be pissed, and may kind of wonder what's
Yeah,
going
so I
on.
thought the neighbor was overdoing it, right? And I don't know
Yeah.
why she's overdoing it. I don't know if, again, I suspect there could be a sense of maybe she didn't feel like she was getting the right reaction from the other parents. Maybe that kind of deer in the headlights shocked reaction that my neighbor may have given her might have left her feeling like, I don't know if these people are taking it seriously, so I'm going to send a strongly worded text. It sounds like it's written by a lawyer, but the text was
Yeah.
like full names. This is serious. This was intentional. This is not harmless play. Um, and Under no circumstances are these kids ever allowed in my yard again. And I'm
Wow.
just like, God, like this really sucks because
How far does she live from you? How many houses are down is she?
it's like 2 houses away from me.
That sucks, man.
So it really sucks because at the beginning of the confrontation, she's like, I'm not even worried about the fact they were in my yard. I just, I'm scared about this rock throwing. And then it ends 2 days later or a day and a half later with this text saying, like, we're enemies now and you need to take this seriously. And I didn't respond to that group text, thankfully, because I would have pointed out to her that actually this is the definition of harmless, because no harm was done. Um,
Do you
but
think your kids now fully understand the lesson? Did they learn the
I think
lesson?
so. I don't know for sure that it'll be the last time they ever learn it, but it turns out their little reign of terror, this was not the only thing they did on their little reign of terror.
Oh,
We
tell me more. Tell me more. They're
so
already sticking it to the man.
after 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 thinking this was the height of it, right? Thinking my kid didn't throw the rock, he was with the kid who threw the rock, but bad on him for trespassing in backyards, bad on him for not trying to tell the kid, hey, you shouldn't throw rocks. I get a call from another neighbor. Hey, neighbor below me thinks that your kids may have been in his yard. He's got him on the Ring camera. Just a heads up, I gave him your number. He's going to be reaching out. I'm like, oh God, what did they do now? So I start asking my son, like, what else did you guys do? Where else
This is
were
a
you?
different neighbor.
Different neighbor now, like all kind of adjacent yards. And so I start quizzing my son, and he starts saying, well, yeah, they may have gone in another neighbor's yard, and they might have like trampled on some roses, or they might have taken apart. There are these electronic deer deterrence machines. It's like a little like speaker and a light you put in your lawn, and if it sees a deer, if it motion senses a deer, it'll blast off this like annoying sound. So he's like, we might have taken one of those apart. We might have trampled on some flowers, and we might have gone in their backyard. And I'm like, their backyard is gated. How did you do that? And he's like, well, so and so could reach over the fence and open the gate, and that's what we. I'm like, oh my God, like,
This kind of reminds me. I love taking my kids for bike rides. I love, me. I love to ride my bike. I love doing long rides. But one of my favorite things is seeing fancy neighborhoods. And most fancy neighborhoods are behind gates. And I would take my son with me when he was like 8, 9, years old, and
a couple
sneak
years ago, yeah.
past the security and just and if they said something, just bolt and just go tour the fancy neighborhood because ultimately,
Yeah,
like, what are they
yeah. You're talking about the gated
so
neighborhood.
that
You're not
sounds
you're not
like
talking about breaking into someone's specific yard as much as like
no,
getting
but
into
like
the
when
the
you're
the the blocks.
5,
Yeah.
it's the same concept. I'm an adult doing this. I was 40 at the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
or 42 or whatever, 43.
Yeah.
I,
That's fair.
like these are 5-year-olds. And this is like, to me, this is just like such normal
Yeah.
boundary setting. And
Right.
it reminds me like when I was a kid, one time I got a whooping from my dad because there was this, I think it was like an agapanthus or something, and the flower looked really interesting to me, so I took it off and I cut it open. And my dad like spanked me because I ruined the flower. But like, I mean, and I guess I learned something about boundaries. But in my mind, it's like, no, no, that's what a kid's supposed to do. That's like like the fact that they're taking apart something in their yard and all that. That to me is like the normal curiosity of a child, right? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that exactly what they're supposed to do?
Totally. Yeah.
And yet we're kind of like demonizing them for doing exactly what they're supposed to do at
I'm
that
not
age.
too upset about it, and the second set of neighbors took it all in stride. But there
Yeah.
were some parts that I was disappointed about, and he had video, so he sent me the 3 videos. And in one video, I see my son pick up this electronic deer deterrent device. He picks it out of the lawn and he gives it to his friend, and then his friend smashes it on the driveway. And I'm like, oh, like he's clearly just trampling all over their lawn and then like raising hell. And in the next video, so that's video 1. Video 2 is my son again has one of these deer deterrent electronic devices in his hand. They're standing by a fountain, and my son is telling one of the other kids to pee in the fountain. And my son is handing the deer deterrent device to the other kid and telling him to put it in the fountain. And so my son's egging on this behavior, and so like,
Is this deer deterrent thing connected to any kind of live wire
no,
or
look,
is
it's
it
all
just
battery
okay?
powered. It's
Okay, so
yeah,
he's not
so
like gonna electrocute this kid.
no, luckily not. But and luckily all that stuff would normally be low voltage, so even then it would be, generally safe. But but yeah, the videos revealed that like, hey, it wasn't just my son hanging out with these hooligans and going along with things. My son's also egging them on, and they're doing
I
things that
call
are
that leadership potential.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
It could be.
I see.
It could be. I think this is the thing. Like this could be leadership potential, and this could be developing independence, and this could just be the process. And I did things that were borderline vandalism when I was a kid, and were definitely a nuisance and mischief when I was a kid. And you know what? Good on the property owner who sent me the videos. He said, "This should be a good teaching moment. Those are really valuable." And
That's great.
his kids are in their 30s now, and he sent me the videos. Said, I hope it's a good teaching moment. Those are really good to have. And then he said, "Thank God these videos weren't around when I was a kid." So like
Yes.
he's got the perspective there. And so, they didn't break windows. I do think they may have trampled some of the landscaping a little bit. Um, it was very mild mischief and vandalism. I was disappointed in my son.
Did you have a
And
strong talking to them both?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Evie had stayed inside and was playing inside, so she didn't participate. But
Did John have any consequences for his
yeah,
actions with you
so
guys?
so we've come up with a few consequences. One is we were going to go on a camping trip this weekend with those same kids, with their family and another family, and I withdrew us from the camping trip. I mean, it's
Painful. That hurts.
uh
That probably hurts you a little too, because it's
yeah, and
like
so it kind of makes me realize, like I've realized this before, but it I need to be reminded of this. Like I'm pretty sure the best consequences for our kids usually involve are usually consequences that are harder on the parents. Like I was looking
it.
forward to hanging out with these grown-ups and having beer around a fire. Um, and if I tell my kids like, well, we're going because it's what I want to do, then I will not find there. I just can't find a suitable proportional
It
consequence. This is the consequence, so I have to do it. I think.
it's so funny. I just because I love the point you brought up, and I'll let you finish with like I know there was more consequences than that, but I love there's something you said that the consequences that are best are the ones that are most difficult on the parent. So like, for
Yeah.
me growing up, it was the belt, right? That was the consequence, and it was a pretty consistent one, and it's an effective deterrent. I just don't do that with my kids. I don't know where I fully stand on physical discipline, because I think there is probably a time and place for it. I don't think it's always the wrong thing, but it's just for me, it's I spanked Jude one time. He learned nothing from it, so I never did it again. It was when he was very young, and for a hilarious story that for another time. But since then, it is absolutely right. And I was actually faced with that exact situation yesterday. Jude fights all the time with his brother, which he has our house. We have a house manager who picks him up from school and brings them home. And she basically just does pick and drop off. That's the extent of her, caring for them for the most part. So, every her experiences, Jude is constantly, picking on his brother, starting, physical kind of exchanges such that she has to pull over. He's constantly talking back to her, disrespecting her. And, she told me about it the other day. It was 2 days ago, about how incredibly disrespectful he was. And in fact, the contractor who was just doing work in her house pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I saw your kid try to wrestle, an iPad from her hand because she wanted to check his homework and he didn't want it, so he forcefully grabbed it." And I'm pissed when I this happens, and I'm just like, "Dude, if you continue this way, I'm going to send you to like boarding school," which is total bullshit. I'm not like sending to Hogwarts or whatever. Like, but I'm just trying to, scare him. But that's like the easy way out, right? Just yelling or hitting. But really, what I ended up
Or
doing
or even
practically,
banishment, right? Or even banishment of
y-
like time out,
Yeah, I mean, I would
you're
never
banished.
banish my kid. Oh, yeah, I see what
But
you're saying. Banish
in
like
the
that.
moment, it feels like a potentially
But
an
they
easy
learn nothing
consequence.
at that age from
Yeah.
timeout. So what I actually had, I mean, we have about an acre and a quarter yard with about 30 oaks on it that got hit hard by the freeze. There are leaves everywhere. I mean,
Wow.
I'm thinking like more than 50 contractor bags full of leaves, if I
Yeah.
had to guess how much cleanup is. I was like, it is now your job every day after school. You are going to work on this until this yard is clean. And this is so he's been doing that every day.
Good for him.
And, at first it starts off with, he sneaks over to the neighbor's house and hangs out with their kids to kind of avoid the work, which I was actually kind of happy about, but call him back in. Then it's, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. I was like, figure it out. Watch him struggle for about 30 minutes. Okay, this is how you do it efficiently. But dad, blah, blah, blah. I was like, there's no buts, man. You got to finish this. So the only way this is going to be less painful is if you learn to do it efficiently and you see the wheels turning and and like, he does learn like the tricks of like how you efficiently transfer the leaves to the bag and how you prop the bag open so it doesn't fall over. And not only is he getting like sunlight, he's getting physical activity, he's learning a new skill, which is a practical one. We will always have nature, right? Lawns and all that stuff. He is feeling a sense that he's contributing to his household because you can already see the progress. And I can tell you later that day, he had to do some homework with his mom. He was laughing and like
Good. Dude,
really,
and
he
hopefully he's
seemed to be
proud,
having a good
he's
day.
hopefully he's proud of the problem solving, the learning arc, right, that he had with doing it, and gaining more confidence in his ability to tackle tasks that he doesn't otherwise have experience with, right? I mean, that's been an invaluable skill set for both of us, the ability to just dive into things that we don't know, but we're like, I guess we can figure it out. Let's get going.
I
Um,
think little boys are driven by I think, and I'll say this, I think all human beings. One thing that I don't think I even ask my patients enough, but I should include it with every visit, and I'm going to start doing it, is like, what is your purpose? Human beings are driven by purpose. Like, that is why I love what I do. Like, I feel a deep purpose to what I do. Like, in the work that I do, I feel that it is meaningful, that I wake up feeling a sense of like responsibility, but also privilege
yeah,
in the way that our patients trust me with their own lives and the lives of their family and even their children.
yeah,
And I think that, I mean, I'm going off on a weird tangent, but teaching kids to, get that feeling of accomplishment that you did something and it mattered and it contributed.
yeah.
But anyways, that was an aside. We could
Yeah, no,
edit
that's
that
cool.
out later
I
if it
love
was
hearing.
boring, but
I've been meaning to ask you, yeah, kind of the follow up from. I knew Jude had a hard day on Monday. I've been meaning to ask you how that shook out, and it sounds like so far so good. Honestly, like it sounds like some good development from it. Um, I just
so
want to point
you were
out
talking
some.
about consequences. I cut you off. You gave me
Yeah,
the
I
first.
think I want to point out like just some things that am feeling are likely like true kind of concepts, and maybe they're not final. Like I'm not writing a Bible about this, but it does seem like some of the best consequences for my kids are inconvenient for the parents, and to the extent that we try to, in my house, to the extent that we try to minimize the inconvenience on the parents, I think we end up diluting the value of the consequence to the kids. There have been so
Absolutely.
many times where my where I should have taken away movie night from my kids, and my gut told me like, "Oh, I don't want to. I'm really looking forward to cuddling with my kids on the couch. I'm really looking forward to them being um engaged in their own thing for 2 hours so I can have time to myself for 2 hours." But I'll tell you, like, the one time recently that one of my kids had movie night taken away, they get movie night once a week. One time recently, my son did something bad, and the consequence was you don't get movie night. Um, so he went and did like just read books with one of us, and Evie got to do movie night with one of us. And I'll tell you, my son, it was good bonding time with my son. It was good reading time. And he was, I mean, very upset. He was very, very upset in the lead up to that consequence, like, throwing a fit, temper tantrum. But he calmed down, he read books, and ultimately he was so sweet and his behavior was really on point for a while, like for weeks because of this one consequence. And it was a pain in the ass. I mean, it really meant like changing the plans we had for the night and separating up the family. And we're canceling this camping trip. That means my daughter doesn't get to go on the camping trip. That means I don't get to go on the camping trip. Um
But I know it's not as though they're gonna be at home, you're gonna be on the laptop, they're gonna be watching, movies.
no, no,
You're gonna be doing something with them.
so I'm looking for something to do. I think our local Parks and Rec department is hosting a park cleanup day on Saturday. And I think I'm going to take my kids to it, and they're going to pull weeds and stuff, just very similar kind of debris clearing work to what you were talking about with Jude. It's going to be outdoors. It could be fun. It will not be appealing in the same way that going on a camping trip with bikes and friends and Easter egg hunts and stuff will be. It'll be hard work. I think ultimately they'll like it, and that's okay. I don't mind if they like the alternative activity. It's just we're going to make sure the alternative activity is not designed for fun, right?
Yeah.
And I think
What are you doing on the day the Lord has risen? That's
well,
Sunday.
we celebrated our zombie Christ on Sunday of this past week because Megan's going to be out of town for like 9 days. She's going with a friend to Bali. She leaves Friday. She doesn't come back till the following Saturday, so she's going to miss Easter. So we did
She's
a
in
little.
Bali for Easter.
She's going to be in Bali for Easter with a
Nice.
girlfriend. Yeah.
Very cool.
Um. So we already did kind of an Easter celebration, and I don't know what we'll do, but I'm going to find some on the surface wholesome and boring thing to occupy our time.
Can I
And
say, Andrew, I'm gonna cut you. I keep cutting you off, but I think the readers must know this. You are honestly like, because I hear, obviously, doing what I do, I know so much about my patients and their relationships and how they, are with their spouses, how they are with their kids, and a lot of them are amazing. I just want to say you are an absolute standout in that regard. Like, you are
thanks,
one of
man.
the best parents like I've ever met, because like you're a busy dude. Like, for people who don't know, this is not your only hat. It's not like you spend all day worrying about the, after hours clinic podcast. You run your own business that, expands multiple states. You work your ass off, but I actually demonstrate what I think is actually the most important part of being a parent, which is simply being there. Like, not hovering, like you're not a hoverer, like you let your kids have their independence, but man, are you there? Like, you are helping with getting them ready for school every day. And that's like a non-negotiable for you. Like on the weekends, you always have some activity where you're taking the kids out. They're hiking, they're camping, they're doing community service for their felony, in this case, for their hate crime against your neighbor. And whether it's a good time or bad time doesn't matter. Like, what they'll remember is you were there. And I
Thanks,
actually
man.
like think a lot about my own father in this way. I didn't get along well with my father because he was super authoritarian. I got the belt. He was the type that never apologized for anything, was always stern, always scared, right? But he's 85 years old now, and I see him a lot. I'll be seeing him this weekend. My kids see him a lot. They know him. And what I take away, all the memories that I've distilled from my childhood, and I've washed out the bad ones, is he was always there. Like, whenever he was needed, he was there. Like, when he had to drive an hour to pick me up from school so I could play sports after school. He was there. I mean, he drove an hour plus each way after work. It was the most awkward, unpleasant car ride ever where I was terrified of what I might say wrong. But I got home. It's like the old meme. But did you die? Like, no, I didn't. I turned out good. Like, and so I just want to say, like, we make parenting sound so complicated, but honestly, fundamentally, what you're doing and I try to do the same with my kids, is being there, being present, not here, not in space, not in the satellites, not in the cloud, but being present.
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't I surely don't deserve all of the accolades you gave me, but I aspire to be worthy of most of them, and that's very kind. And yeah, I want to expand one more point and say, like, I'm at this point, it's become clear, like, I need to reach out more to my neighbors, and I need to let them know that, because most of my neighbors are retirees. Most of my neighbors have kids that are grown up and moved off and are making grandkids. So most of my neighbors are empty nesters, and I wanna prepare a communication that I'll probably deliver in person and just say, like, "I'm raising young kids. You might know all about that. I bet I have a lot to learn from you about that. But just so you know, one of the things I'm gonna be doing is giving them more and more independence, and they're gonna be playing more and more in the neighborhood without immediate supervision, hovering over them." And, so I welcome you correcting them when they need it. I welcome you calling me if something's wrong, and I'll come and get them. Um, I want you to know that they know to stay out of people's yards, that so they should not be tearing up your if they're in your front yard messing with your flower bushes, you should know they've already been warned about that 10 times. Just let me know immediately and yell at them and tell them to get the hell off your lawn.
Yeah, make it like the 1950s. Just spank them.
Yeah, well, I guess what I wanna say is, like, there's a whole spectrum of neighbors, right? There's the woman who is absolutely irate that and terrified of this rock that hit her deck, calling it harmful and calling it, intentional. And then there's the neighbor who's just like, "Oh, like, it's a good teaching moment. I'm lucky cameras weren't around when I was a kid." But what I want my neighbors to know is, like, this is a messy process. Raising good kids is going to be a messy process. And that means there's going to be more hijinks and mischief. And we expect to take responsibility for that and to make it right and to instill consequences where they're appropriate. And we invite correction from our neighbors when that is needed. And also don't let my kids off the hook. Like, if you see them trampling through your rose bushes, I've already told them 10 times about that. You don't need to think like, "Oh, they're just kids, maybe they don't know." They do know. There's some things they do know already. Throwing rocks is something they know. Trampling around your yard, whether it's an open backyard or a closed backyard, an open front yard or not, like, they understand they should not be on your property, unless they're walking to your front door to knock on your door and talk to you,
I
or
think
unless
this
they've
is
been
such a
invited.
I think this point you bring up, because I know you're busy, we're busy, we can't stay on here forever and talk. But I think this would actually be a great segue for a follow-up episode on the importance of social connectivity. This is something I try to express so deeply to my children. I have a saying that I tell them all the time. Life is what happens when you leave your house. That is when you run into people and you meet them and you get to know them. And that's something that I think, as parents, we always seem to pass down the traits we like our bad habits to kids first, but you really want to pass down some of your strength. And I feel like that since I was a kid, that was always a strength of mine. I was like never afraid to approach a stranger to say, "Hey, what's up?"
Mhm.
And but like There is a thing that's happened that is just gradually happened with time. It's also sort of built into American culture, but I think it's worsened with time, technology, social media, the common culprits, which is this: America, like the American dream is owning property, having a fence, good fences make good neighbors, basically having complete autonomy, not seeing your neighbor basically be on an island of your own. I don't think that's healthy. Like
No.
I
Yeah,
because
definitely not. Yeah.
I live in the kind of neighborhood where we all have large lots. It could be very easy for us to never interact. And I think a lot of people want it that way. I mean, I understand privacy to an extent. I'm not against fences. I'm not against privacy hedges. I plant my own, but I want people to like realize that like privacy should not be this like end all goal that you strive for. There's so
Mm.
much data out there that tells us that social connectivity is good for you. Like
And community is critical. Yeah.
the happiest neighborhood I've ever lived in when I bought my first house in San Clemente was in very much a middle class neighborhood because it was, most people bought in the 90s where you could afford it as a teacher and, whatever equivalent salary kind of middle class jobs. So it was teachers, firefighters, plumbers, like all the spectrum. Houses were really close together. It was very difficult to even walk outside in your neighborhood because some neighbor would stop you and chat you up. I remember when Ufra delivered Ben in 2019. There's a story for another time, but both she and Ben became critically ill and had to go to the ICU. So we were in the hospital for weeks. And in that weeks, our next door neighbor watered our roses and like pruned them for us. The neighbors across the street brought us food. Like it, like that is one of these beautiful experiences that I'll never forget. And this idea of like privacy, I have to have, the biggest truck on the road and take up the most space and the biggest lot of land and the biggest. I think we should be questioning, is that really what we should be striving for? I personally think we need to be striving for more social connectivity. And I think I want to just jump on that topic in a later episode if we
Good.
could.
I love it. Yeah, I love that idea. I think it's a part of, I think there's an Arthur Brooks book that, we'll have to bring back as a book club review, How to Live a Good Life. I think that's one of his, key tenets as well. How important it is to have community and social bonds. So,
Awesome. I
um,
look forward to
yeah,
it.
man, I more to come. I'm sure I'll have more to report in future weeks about, how raising hooligans is going in my neighborhood. But the tangent I was getting off on is I need to go meet my neighbors and let them know that the experiment is fully underway. These were not going to be kids who get locked up at home and stay only in their own backyard, but they're going to roam the streets and they're going to go play. And it is what the neighborhood wants. But I do know that some neighbors have forgotten what it's like to have rambunctious 5-year-olds running around, and there's some messiness to that, and I'll be asking for their patience and their support in that process.
Well, hopefully you
Um,
get it, man.
I'm sure
And
I'm sure I
I'm
will.
sure you
I'm
will.
I'm sure I
Yeah.
will. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I'll also piss half of them off at times when, John sets their shed on fire or something. I mean, kids are gonna do crazy shit and it's gonna bother people, and I think that's not a sign that it's a failure and we need to rein it back as much as it is we need to um have the right consequences at our fingertips to take
Yeah.
advantage of it. So,
Yeah. Well,
anyways, thanks for letting me rant on this. Thanks for being a
yeah,
sounding board.
no.
Appreciate it.
I love dispensing our amateur parenting advice because everyone who does this is an amateur. No one's a pro. But I hope that some of our points were salient. I hope the people listening found this entertaining, and I hope you guys have thoughts. Please leave it in the comments. I would love to hear what I'm saying that is absolutely wrong, where what I went wrong, why I said the wrong thing, or if you just agree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So please, in the comment section, just
Like,
let us
comment,
know.
subscribe, and look out for future episodes. We'll have a book club episode coming on the book Surrounded by Narcissists. And we'll return to some medical literature here soon and talk about some exciting news in the medical space, where we come from.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Looking forward
Bye
to
for
it.
now.
Take care.